we need to make D.C. listen. There is nothing more important we could do than that.
The senator yield for a question without losing the floor.
I'm happy to yield for a question without yielding the floor.
First of all, let me just suggest that a lot of people have forgotten the cost of this thing. I'd like to run over a couple of things, if it's all right with the senator, and then ask him if this same thing that is happening in my state of Oklahoma is happening in his state to the south of Oklahoma, the state of Texas. You know, in just a week away from when people will have to start signing up for ObamaCare, and I commend Senator Cruz for reminding the American people that this law doesn't have to be a new reality. It doesn't have to be. We can stop it. There are still lingering questions about exactly what this is all going to look like. But we do know that this reform law, as they call it, continues to be expensive, burdensome, and overreaching, so much more as time goes by. It started out just a little bit that didn't sound too bad to the American people. It's estimated that the program now will cost as much as $2.4 trillion over the years. You know, it's hard to talk about these, I suggest to my friend from Texas. We know around here what $1 trillion is, but most people really don't. It's hard to really understand this thing as to what is going on in America. $2.6 trillion over 10 years once this thing would be fully implemented if they're successful in doing it. Now, the cost estimates have only continued to rise since the law was passed. Most recently, the administration has asked for another $5.4 billion in discretionary funds next year for implementation. Now, $5.4 billion in discretionary funds. Let's stop and think about that. One of the worst things about the Obama administration, I have to say this, and the senator from Texas understands this since he's on the Senate Armed Services Committee, is how this president has been disarming America. And the discretionary money that would be coming out of this is money that otherwise could be used for our systems and to support our war fighters over there. And that's just the cost to the federal government. It doesn't include the lost hours, the wages and the employees and the lost jobs and the cost to families. You know, everyone agrees that premiums are going to rise. In my home state of Oklahoma, we have a guy named John Doak. He's the insurance commissioner. After talking to insurance companies, says that Oklahomans' rates will increase a minimum of 30% and up to 100%. And under one of 4 insurers in Oklahoma, rates will vary from $143 a month for a 30-year-old with basic coverage to $673 per month for a 64-year-old who wants the best coverage. Now, remember, the president promised to lower the premiums by $2,500. What I want to do, if I could, is there is a little bit of good news. And I know that the senator from Texas is aware of it, but I'm going to ask you how many other people are aware of this. We have a great attorney general in the state of Oklahoma. His name is Scott Pruitt, and I suggest you've probably met Scott Pruitt. Before we vote on this thing, we have a serious question as to whether or not some of these subsidies will go even further. What Scott Pruitt did, he filed a lawsuit that stated that that through the courts are leading the charge to dismantle Obamacare and put an end to it. So just last month, the judge overseeing the lawsuit ruled against a motion filed by the Obama administration to dismiss the case, which means the case will proceed. That's huge. I mean, if this goes through, this whole thing will be dismantled. That's why we need to go ahead and fight this thing as best we can, recognizing that there are other areas where the American people are speaking. Certainly, Scott Pruitt is doing really great things. I heard you, the senator, mention Congressman Louis Gohmert. Congressman Gohmert is a very close friend of mine. We've been together in a lot of things. And I was visiting with him. Actually, he's in the chamber right now and would like to kind of share with us some of the things that are happening in his district, which is Eastern Texas. Now, just some of the letters that he gets back, and this is from someone. He said, to get set up on the software was too expensive. She also didn't want to be limited on the time she felt she needed to spend with her parents. Therefore, she stopped taking Medicare, had to go on strict cash basis. My wife's doctor has just retired because he did not want to deal with Obamacare. a letter that came in from someone whose name is Katie Smith. Said, "Dear Congressman Gomer," and she goes through quite a letter. Then she says, the explanation from IBM was that they projected that health care costs under the current IBM Medicare eligibility retirement plan options would nearly triple by 2020. Another one from Riverside Cottages, I guess that's someplace in eastern Texas. We were notified July 15th, 2013, that my husband's insurance coverage, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Montana Comprehensive Health Assurance, will terminate December 31st, 2013. When my husband contacted Blue Cross and Blue Shield, they told him that this policy will no longer exist due to Obamacare. He will need to find new coverage. And it goes on and on. It's an interesting thing, and the reason I'm reading Texas letters right now is because we received a lot of them, but they're up in my office someplace. So this thing really hits home and hits home hard. So I would just like to ask my friend from Texas if he's received a lot of these anecdotal letters of people who are suffering really serious hardships, anticipating what's going to happen when this becomes a reality.
I thank my friend from Oklahoma for his excellent question, and let me say at the outset I am grateful for Senator Inhofe's leadership and for his courage. From the outset, Senator Inhofe has been with Mike Lee and me on this fighting to defund Obamacare, and let me note, Senator Inhofe, like some of the other senators who came to the floor of the Senate this afternoon, including Senator Roberts and Senator Sessions and Senator Enzi, are respected veterans of this institution, are leaders who have earned the respect of their colleagues. And I am grateful for Senator Inhofe being willing to stand up and be a leader in this fight. That courage is contagious. And I hope it will continue to be even more contagious in the Republican conference. I hope by the time we come to the cloture vote on Friday or Saturday that we see all 46 Republicans united in voting against shutting off debate, against allowing Majority Leader Harry Reid the ability to fund Obamacare with a straight 51-vote party vote.
I asked my friend, though, before that happens, I think it's really important, and don't you agree, that people in this country have to know what this is really all about. This is socialized medicine. Now, a lot of them didn't believe that. Let me get the date on this. Do you remember the date that Harry Reid? Last week, the leader Harry Reid, on the PBS Nevada Week in Review, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid was asked whether his goal was to move Obamacare to a single-payer system. His answer was yes, yes, absolutely yes. Now, do a lot of the people know what a single-payer system is? That is essentially socialized medicine. I want to kind of relive, you said some of the more seasoned one. Yes, I was around during the Clinton administration when there was a thing that was called Hillary Healthcare. Does my friend from Texas remember Hillary Healthcare?
I do indeed, and I remember in particular at the time, the press, all of the graybeards in Washington saying at the time Hillary Care was unstoppable. Can't be stopped. You need to accept it. Republicans need to get together. If you'll recall, initially, the response was something widely described as Hillary Care Light. And back then, in the midst of the Hillary Care fight, there were a few courageous leaders in the Senate and the House who stood up against Hillary Care. And what changed that fight, what changed that battle, was the American people rising up. At the end of the day, it's the only thing that can win any fights.
Yeah, and I would suggest that's exactly what did happen. I can remember going from Washington to my hometown of Tulsa. Normally, I have to go through Chicago. Chicago actually is where the AMA had its headquarters, and it's probably still there. I'll always remember this because I was rejoicing. I was coming back after the long fight against Hillary Healthcare, socialized medicine. I remember asking the question on the Senate floor. I said, try to explain this to me. If this socialized medicine, Doesn't work in Great Britain. It doesn't work in Sweden. It doesn't work in Canada. Why do you think it would work in this country? Now, they'll never say it, but what they're thinking is, well, if I were running it, it would work. And we got that point across slowly. It took months and months. They started way ahead with Hillary Healthcare. Then we were catching up. Just like right now, people are realizing this is a failed socialized medicine effort, and we had won this thing. And I remember, and it kind of relates to what's happening today, I was on that plane going through Chicago to Tulsa, and I picked up the Wall Street Journal, opened it up, and there was a full-page ad by the AMA supporting Hillary Healthcare. Of course, I stopped in Chicago and went by to visit them at the AMA, and it just seems like a lot of people like them. Now, these are a lot of, an organization representing a lot of real smart doctors and others who were saying that we can't win. We can't win this thing, and therefore, let's go ahead and give it. We had already won when they ran that ad. Now, I don't know how many days before that they put the ad in, but nonetheless, that's happened. I didn't know whether my friend remembered that because my friend was not in the Senate at that time, but that's exactly what happened, and it's very similar, very analogous to a lot of things that are happening today. The other thing I did want to mention, to let you know, anytime you have desperation setting in, there are a lot of things that go around to confuse people. Let me tell you what's happening in Oklahoma I found about today. This will surprise my friend from Texas. You know, there are 14 of us that started, you and me and 12 other people. It was about 6 weeks ago, I guess it was. And so all this time, we've been lockstep trying to see what we could do to stop this thing from happening to my 20 kids and grandkids and the rest of America. And so people realized I was there in the very beginning, as the senator from Texas mentioned. And yet we have some of the Obama people are doing robocalls in my state of Oklahoma, posing as Tea Party people, saying call Inhofe because he is for Obamacare. Can you believe that something like that is happening? I asked my good friend. It shows to me a level of desperation to get people confused as to what the issue is and want to get to these deadlines so we can get past and we can have this thing as a reality that every liberal in America probably is supporting.
Well, I thank my friend from Oklahoma for that question. I have to say I'm not surprised. And, there's an old adage among courtroom lawyers. If you have the facts, pound the facts. If you have the law, pound the law. And if you don't have neither, pound the table. To be honest, the approach of Obamacare defenders is an awful lot of table pounding. It's an awful lot of let's discuss anything other than what's in fact happening. So, if you pick up any newspaper talking about this issue, what will the reporters write about? The political reporters in Washington, D.C., I think some of them may be frustrated because they really wanted to be Hollywood gossip reporters. Because they cover these issues as a battle of personalities. You want to get a story on the front pages of the paper, find some anonymous congressional staffer to say something scurrilous, ideally include a little profanity in it, and the political reporters of this town eat that up. Because apparently the only thing that matters are the personalities bickering back and forth. And in many ways that's unsurprising. Because if you're trying to defend a law that the lead author calls a train wreck, that the unions who supported it are desperately trying to get out from under, that you and your Democratic Senate colleagues are desperately asking for yourselves to be exempted from it, then you sure as heck don't want to talk about how the law is operating. You sure as heck don't want to talk about all of the people that are losing their jobs because of Obamacare. You sure as heck don't want to talk about all the people who can't get jobs, all the small businesses that aren't growing because of Obamacare. You certainly don't want to talk about all of the people forced into part-time work, into 29 hours a week work. You don't want to talk about the insurance premiums that are going up, that are pricing people out of the insurance markets, and you especially don't want to talk about all the people losing their health insurance. You read the stories from East Texas of citizens there losing their health insurance. That's happening all over the country. So it doesn't surprise me that you're seeing deceptive robocalls in the state of Oklahoma, because they don't want to debate on the merits of Obamacare because it's indefensible. And so the only strategy is smoke and mirrors. The only strategy is, well, if we can't talk about the law, let's convince them about something else. Let's distract them. Let's figure out anything to take people's minds off of the underlying issue. And I would note to my friend in Oklahoma, the only way that strategy works is if the American people don't believe Washington will listen to them. And look, there's a lot of reason for the American people to believe Washington's not going to listen to them, because Washington hasn't been listening to us for a long, long time. Politicians on both sides of this aisle have lost touch with their constituents. Don't go home, don't go to town hall meetings, and view the desires of their constituents as simply uninformed and not relevant to doing our jobs.
Let me just say, you said something that is so profound.
And I'm yielding for a question, but not yielding the floor.
Yes, of course. This will be real quick, but when you said that if you don't have logic on your side, you don't have the facts on your side, you don't have the public on your side, what do you do? Well, it's not just pounding the table. It's calling names. I went through this, I suggested to my friend 12 years ago, when the Kyoto Treaty was up and everyone thought, well, global warming's coming, and that was going to be everyone's trip to the White House was to support global warming, until we realized what the cost would be. And I was the bad guy to stand up and say, no, this isn't true. First of all, it is a hoax. Secondly, even if it's not, we couldn't do it. Well, that's when all the name calling. I can remember being called in writing and by a fairly prominent person, I should be hanged for treason at that time. This is what they get to. And that's what my friend is going through right now with a lot of people who don't agree with him. But now, 12 years later, what's happened? People realize that it was right. I'm not suggesting it's going to be 12 years before they realize that you're right on this, but it means that the behavior of people today is something that has happened many, many times in the past. And so I would just ask my friend to remember that and realize quite often when you're right in a controversial issue, you're going to be the subject of a lot of criticism, a lot of cussing, a lot of name calling, and a lot of violence. So this isn't the first time.
I thank my friend from Oklahoma for his very kind remarks, for his support and encouragement, and for his friendship from day one since I arrived here in the Senate.